In terms of where land investors are, if you look at a heat map, you would say the Sun Belt would have South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina. So the kind of the South right there is probably the hottest area, I'd think.
Idaho, very, very expensive. A lot of Californians migrated over there, pricing inflated.
Parks and stuff, yeah.
Yes, beautiful area too.
Yeah. What I like to do when I'm just, after I pick a market, before I even go into county selection or anything, I like to specifically just pull up a map and look at what the terrain looks like. You're gonna see a lot of light green or dark green. The light green is agricultural. From our experience, has been one of the more difficult areas to not sell. They're very easy to sell, but to acquire. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today's topic, we're talking about the best states to do land deals in. I'm your host, Daniel Apke, joined today with Anthony. Once again, welcome back, Anthony.
Thanks, Dan. Good to be here.
Excited to be here. And we did a YouTube live on this last night, so if you guys haven't seen that, you can go check that out. And I do some walkthroughs on Zillow and walking through some of the states that we're doing deals in. And in this episode, we're going to reveal all the states that we're going to talk about the states we haven't done deals in more, because I don't want to list out all the ones we have because it's a lot more, obviously. But we're going to talk about the states the Apke team here has done deals in. And we're going to talk about what the best states are, where we've done deals. Is there any logic to that? And where we're going to talk about competition and where a lot of the land investors are secluded and isolated to. And ultimately, at the end, we're going to talk about determining good terrain and how to choose those areas and everything like that.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. The webinar that we did last night, it was really interesting. I didn't realize we did so many deals in all these different states. There's only I think like 7, maybe 6 or 7 states we didn't do deals in.
We'll talk about those. Yeah.
No, so I'm really excited to get into it.
Absolutely. It was one of the biggest YouTube lives ever. So that's why we're doing this episode, is people showed up and people stayed. And it's like, all right, that's a topic that people are interested in. So the first topic I want to get into in this is, where do you start? And if you're just starting out, people get stuck on this. They're like, what market do I start in? Mm-hmm. And the problem is, in the program, I don't tell people to start in specific states, and I do that intentionally. Because if I tell people to go, here's how you find the hottest state, then it would get very competitive very, very quickly in such a small amount. Instead, we take it market by market. But let's talk about where to start. And by market, I mean Southeast Tennessee or Ohio, or starting in a specific area. But let's talk about where to start.
Yeah, the best place to start is in your own backyard, in my opinion. Take that initial look. You have a better understanding of the area. It's just a lot easier for you to evaluate. For me, when I first started, like I'd mentioned in the webinar last night, I'm born and raised in Southern California. I was like, okay, maybe this doesn't work out starting off for a beginner. You can definitely do deals in California. But I was like, I'm going to just evaluate other areas, but start with what piques your interest as well too. Have that curiosity, go through the educational content that we have based off of market selection, and just refine your processes from there. But your own backyard and whatever piques your interest, because you could do this anywhere.
You can. And within every area, we're going to talk about in this episode how there's hot markets and there's cold markets in every single area. So it's not necessarily state by state, which people, they want the answer to find where to go. And you can do this from anywhere. Talking about Southern California, I've seen people only do deals in Southern California, and that's their niche, specifically in San Bernardino County. Yeah, and on the West Coast, the zip codes are so big.
Massive.
Like the zip codes are like counties.
Yeah.
Or no, the counties are, I'm saying the counties are so big. So like, how many counties does California have?
I don't know off the top of my head, but Riverside County and San Bernardino County, where I grew up, I think are the 2 biggest counties in the nation. One of them is for sure the biggest county in the nation. Like, they are absolutely massive.
Yeah, and it takes hours and hours to drive through one county sometimes out there. On the East Coast, you have a state like Ohio with over 100 counties itself. I'm guessing there's 100. There's tons. They're split up everywhere, and it's over-governed. But out west, the counties are much, much bigger. So what I was getting at is within those counties, you have a lot of zip codes, and you can start zip code pricing based on those. But that's not for today's topic. We're not talking about zip code, targeting specific zip codes or really county selection. We're talking about, how to pick a state and what best states to look at and how to analyze terrain. So like Anthony said, starting in your backyard is what we recommend. And if you're in an area you don't want to do it, or you don't believe in, or whatever the situation is, maybe you're in Canada. We have a ton of Canadians in the program, even Europeans. Start somewhere that piques your interest, somewhere you've heard or seen a movie on, just whatever piques your interest. There's no right or wrong state, because like I said, within those states, there's hot and cold markets. But let's talk about where the Apke team has done deals. And we've done deals. I added up yesterday and I showed it on the map on the YouTube live. And there was, I think, 8 or 9 states that we have not done deals in. And those states were Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, Illinois, Idaho, Delaware, Rhode Island, Nebraska.
I think that's it.
8.
Yeah, those are the only ones. We've done deals, I think, in every other state.
The most surprising there was Nebraska, I think, out of those.
You know, we have gotten a deal funding request, though, from Nebraska.
Yeah, just never gone through.
Nope.
So we've done in all 8 states. And if you look at those on the map, besides Delaware and Rhode Island, those are all Idaho, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, all kind of in that central northern pocket right there. Is there logic behind there?
You know, I was just about to ask you, why do you think that is? But for me, I think it's just a lot of agricultural land. And I mean, that's the only thing that really comes top of mind. I feel like deals could still be done there, and it's just maybe not top of mind for people. I mean, I've never even thought about targeting them myself. I've always been in the Midwest and the East Coast because that's just what I know and what I'm familiar with. But I think a lot of it is just agricultural land, maybe any type of legalities maybe for marketing, but can't really think of anything.
Yeah, and you go to the North Dakotas and the land, I mean, you start to deal with a lot of mineral rights and oil and things like that, but that's normal in a lot of, Oklahoma and Texas and those states. So I don't think that's an outlier because of that. You know, we've done tons of deals in Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's it. But when you talk about North Dakota and South Dakota, an outsider would think land, there's no demand. And maybe that is like perceived how people view it. And that's why they're staying away. Like there's nothing in North Dakota. But I'm sure there's some land demand in certain counties and markets there for sure. It's not like you can't do deals there. We've evaluated North Dakota and South Dakota deals. We've just never acquired one ourselves. Idaho's one where you talk about Idaho as a state. It can get very, very, very expensive.
Yes, very expensive.
Same as Nebraska.
Nebraska, really?
Well, that's what someone said I didn't check it, but that's what Greg said in the chat last night. He said the Nebraska land's ridiculously expensive.
I could see that, depending on the agricultural land. But yeah, Idaho, very, very expensive. A lot of Californians migrated over there, pricing inflated.
Parks and stuff, yeah.
Yes, beautiful area too.
Yeah.
A lot topography, like you'd mentioned yesterday, is actually pretty sloped.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild out there.
But it's like flat. There'll be flat, and then there'll be mountain ranges and stuff. But it's very expensive, so it has its own challenges, but you can get deals there. I mean, we've done deals in some of the most sloped areas in Colorado and Montana, and we have Utah deals. People think Utah is one of the most sloped states, but we have the desert Utah deals we're doing right now, correct?
Yeah, we had one we funded, then the same day they went under contract. Like it just depends.
That's one of the quickest ones. And then aren't we buying 3 or 4 more with them?
Yeah, they have like 10 other submissions with us within Utah.
Let's sell 1 or 2 more and then figure that out. No, but that just shows like also Illinois. I want to talk about Illinois because I've heard there's some legal issues there. Yeah. But I've never confirmed or denied that. I'm sure you can buy and sell land there. Maybe you can't send mail. Non-solicitation. I don't know. I have to look this up and I'll get back. If someone knows, let us know in the comments about Illinois. I know people who flip houses and stuff there. I'm sure there's a way to do it. There's no way to flip land or invest in land there. And that one's shocking. Well, Illinois, a lot of it looks like Indiana. So it's very rural and farms and agricultural, right? But you also have one of the biggest cities in the country there, Chicago, with the second biggest skyline. So you'd think people would go outside of that. They've had some government issues in Illinois, and I know people think it's corrupt and all that stuff, but I'm sure they're like, I don't know if I've ever reviewed a deal in Illinois.
You know what? I don't think I have either. And we get so many deal funding requests per day. I can't think of one Illinois submission. And it's a beautiful area. I don't know why people don't target it. And even if it is a solicitation law and you can send out mail, there's still plenty of people that cold call and text and do other marketing campaigns.
Or you can put, maybe you need to put like Georgia, they just released the law. And someone asked on the YouTube live last night about the new non-solicitation law that you have to put on your envelope saying this is solicitation, this offer. And then on the inside, like this offer may or may, if it's a blind offer, this offer may or may not be around market value. So you got to put a couple warnings, which is fine. I don't think it's a huge deal. I just think there's a lot of workarounds and people are cold calling and texting there still. But you add that stuff to your mail, it's not the biggest deal, I don't think.
No, compliance is always changing. Just like you had mentioned yesterday, texting, that's always changing to where you have to add new verbiage in your text messages. So it's just being able to move with the trends and stay up to date and always pivot and adjust. I mean, you're running a business. Those are things you need to do on the fly.
Yeah. And in the comments, like, let us know if you guys have seen deals in those areas that we mentioned where we have not done deals. And if there's any I don't think there's any logic besides people just don't go after it. Yeah. And if you look at a map of where land investors are, it used to be like Arizona was the spot. Now you don't really see any Arizona deals, right?
Very rarely. Some will be submitted to us, but those are more so of like the small, everyone was into the desert squares, like very small parcels, more so like infill lots. So do owner financing on it. And I don't want to say they're a thing of the past. Some people are still great at it and that's their business model, but I don't see much of that anymore.
Yeah, but there still is expensive land in Arizona and bigger acreages as well, not the infill that people go after. And I've seen those come and go, but it's not like it used to be. In terms of where land investors are, if you look at a heat map, in our specific community, you would say the Sun Belt, like outside of Florida, exclude Florida, and you have South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and North Carolina. So the kind of the South right there is probably the hottest area, I'd think. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
And then Texas and Oklahoma, kind of that second tier, I would think Arkansas, those states right there. You also have, did I say Tennessee?
You did.
Tennessee's in that southern that I was talking about. And Pennsylvania's another big one. And then, you know, where we don't see as many deals, obviously the 8 states that we listed, zero competition. Like there is not going to be much land competition up there at all. I would be surprised if any.
Yeah, and you know what? I think we should have some sort of a challenge for people like the first ones to bring us deals in those areas, like someone to actually make it proven. Because with Utah, for example, we didn't really think like, oh, we're not getting any submissions here. Maybe it's just not a good area. Now we just got 10. Yeah, and we have a proof of concept. I mean, it sold and went under contract same day. So, I mean.
Was that our first Utah deal?
That was our first Utah deal.
We
had submissions, and then now it's like, it's all about testing it out. And they weren't afraid. They're like, because I've had consultation calls with them and like, we're just going to try it out. Like we're going to deal with it. It's a non-disclosure state. So I really encourage people to try those areas. A lot of those are
non-disclosure states that I listed too.
Oh, really? I know.
It said we did a deal in Montana, but I don't remember a deal in Montana, but
maybe a while ago. I'll check our system.
It must have been a while ago.
Yeah.
That's another crazy one.
That's interesting. Non-disclosure states normally scare people off starting off, but if you are more experienced and you're comfortable with pricing, you can definitely do it. Like people text us all the time. Missouri, Mississippi, we get deals there all the time. So I'm curious to see, you know, what people do as they target those areas.
Yeah, I won an Illinois one, a couple counties removed from Chicago, to see how that goes. I'm just curious.
Not a far drive for us either.
No.
Yeah, I'd be down to drive out there.
Yeah, here it's 4 hours, right? Yeah, I was thinking I was still in Florida when you said that. I've been in Ohio now for a few weeks, and that's why we're live here. All right, well, let's keep moving on then. I want to get into the philosophy of stop thinking state by state. Think of within those state, market by market, and finding those hot markets or finding those middle ground markets where you know you're going to be able to acquire land and you know you're going to sell land. And I want to talk about the philosophy behind, you know, why you don't look at a whole state as a whole, right? Because within California, there's still hot markets, even in California, where people are flocking away from. And that's the most extreme example because California's probably had one of the biggest decline in population. But you take a state like that, there's still going to be good areas to buy and sell land within there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, top of mind, like areas in Orange County, certain places in San Bernardino County that are in the more rural areas, people trying to get away from LA, such huge demand. And it has just been absolutely growing in terms of development. I'm actually helping one of my coaching students go after like larger parcels within those areas because there still is such a huge demand.
And then you take your knowledge that you have from there too, and knowing what you know, not only those markets, but where are people going from there? They're going to Texas, outside Austin, right? And they're going to Las Vegas. People are moving to Las Vegas. So you could go outside there and do some market research in there. And then where else are people going? You said outskirts of Idaho, or is that just for land?
So people have just been migrating to Idaho, I mean, ever since COVID, everywhere too. And a lot of people traveling to the Southeast. I recommend...
What part?
In terms of the Southeast?
What cities are in Idaho besides Boise?
Oh, Idaho? All I know top of head is Boise, but there's plenty of beautiful like camping areas too, and very big in farming, like what the potatoes is like what they're known for, right? But I mean, there's, like you'd mentioned, within states, there's certain pockets that are very hot, and one of the things that a lot of people do is they'll look at like U-Haul trend reports or migration rates, and they'll look at it as a state as a whole. But you need to narrow that down a little bit and figure out what those hot markets are. Take a look at the heat map and then figure out like, okay, well, what do for sale to sold ratios look like? What does the land demand look like? Is this an area that I can actually make a deal? But don't focus on the state as a whole, because I feel like you're going to waste a lot of your time with paralysis by analysis.
Right.
It's so important and so huge. People starting off getting caught up in that.
Yeah, people spend way too much time here when you should be, pick an area that makes sense, and then within there pick a market and a county and zip codes that make sense, and then just rip it. The people spend too much time on this, get caught, and that's what ultimately kills them, because this business made in getting leads. And the fact is, like, if you do it the way we teach, and you're sending out offers to a decent area you can buy and sell land in, doesn't need to be the hottest market ever.
No, not at all. As long as the data looks good and it's something that you get at a good price and the data shows you'll be able to sell it quickly, by all means, go for it.
Perfect. Well, let's talk about, let's say we pull up a map of Idaho, and we have our little counties in there, but we also see the terrain. Because I want to take this and kind of pivot to terrain and talk about how within states, like what terrain you want to look at. Because for an extreme example, take West Virginia. Colorado is different because you have the mountains and then it flattens out, right? West Virginia is just the whole way. You know what I mean? It's just slope. The mountains don't stop anywhere, the Appalachian. But I want to talk about what I like to do when I'm just, after I pick a market, before I even go into county selection or anything, I like to specifically just pull up a map and look at what the terrain looks like. Look at the light green on a map when you're zoomed out and you can see the whole state. You're going to see a lot of light green or dark green or, the rigid mountains. You're going to see things like that. The light green is agricultural when you see that, right? You'll see it's like almost like a tan and green, things like that. That's ag land. That, from our experience, has been one of the more difficult areas to not sell. They're very easy to sell, but to acquire.
Yes, a lot more of an emotional tie, or someone it could be farmed with a farming lease. It just makes it a little bit more complicated.
Exactly. And it's just, farmers know the value of their land, and it's also generational.
Yes,
and they use it also.
Yep.
So it's like going after someone's house first, going after someone's inheritance property that they inherited from in Southeast Ohio from their Aunt Betty, that they've never been to the land, and they live in Alabama,
and they're just paying taxes.
Paying taxes. Yep. When you start going ag land, the reason you're not getting as many of those deals is typically because they're actively using it, and they're tied to it, or their business is tied to it, or they also live right next door and on it, and it's just their generation. That's their business,
Oh, but man, if you get some of those are nice.
Oh, they're fun to sell.
They're
easy to sell.
Get. Yeah,
them. It's so easy to evaluate too, because farmland doesn't. It's flat and it's farmland.
Yeah.
It doesn't really change the price. And so it's so easy to just comp out.
Yeah, definitely. So what are things that you look at? So you were talking about color coding. Is there like a certain percentage in terms of what you would look for? Like, okay, this is mainly like 50% of this seems to be agricultural land. I'm going to move away from this. Like, what's your thought process?
Yeah, I mean, you could always, if you're going to have counties. So yesterday in the YouTube live, I pulled up Ohio, and north of Columbus, essentially northwest. If you take everything, just cut the state pretty much in half and take everything north of Columbus, Ohio, and west of Columbus, Ohio, all of that looked like northern Indiana, just all brown and green ag land. I personally wouldn't go after that if you want deals. You can eventually try it with 20%, and you will get deals there, but I'm trying to talk to you guys about the easiest and most efficient ways to get deals. So let's just exclude that for this conversation. Take those ags out, right? Those are almost 100% counties, all ag.
Yep.
And then we went to Southeast Ohio, and you started seeing a lot of slope. But then a lot of those counties, like Perry County, Ohio, Muskingum County, Ohio,
Athens
County, Ohio, Brown County, Ohio, Claremont, all of those had a nice mix, right? And then you want to zoom into those counties. Athens gets pretty sloped, so you're going to have some challenges there, but it was enough flat, I think, to really get it done. I like that county. It's going to be, I think, more expensive because of the college town and demand there, but that comes in county selection. I'm just talking about terrain here. So Athens looked good. Muskingum looked really good. Perry looked really good. Perry, the northwest of it, got really agriculture. And what you guys can do if you don't want to target ag is exclude it through polygon. If it's split like that, that was like a pretty line and up.
Yeah.
Got ag land. So you can exclude it. But you want to mix. So I don't mind sending to some ag land, but you want to mix. You like the highest percentage of lots that we buy are just normal wooded lots that have some rolling hills or flat. You don't want it to go straight up a mountain. You don't want it to be, you just a nice variety. You want 70-80% of your offers going to land like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like the biggest thing is taking that initial glance and understanding like, okay, what are some things that could be a challenge within this county? What are things that would be maybe a little bit easier? So when you're evaluating areas like West Virginia, you have that understanding like, okay, I'm mainly going to be dealing with heavy topography, or like the slope is pretty crazy. So what exactly do I need to understand if I'm targeting this area? Or if I'm targeting Southeast Ohio, it's like, okay, most of this seems to be really good wooded recreational land, but there is some agricultural land. Is there anything I need to understand to be more efficient within this area? And then just get after it. But you need to really understand pros and cons in those areas that you're targeting.
So there's pros and cons, like Anthony's saying, in almost every single state out there. When we first started, we were doing a ton in Georgia. And Georgia was one of those where there's a lot of pros and there wasn't a lot of cons. And the cool thing about Georgia, you have a top city there, Atlanta. So a lot of the activity branches off of that. And then you also have, it's relatively flat, so that, and it's also wooded. And a lot of times where areas in the U.S. are flat, on the East Coast at least, where they're flat like that, they're usually ag land, like Indiana, right? But Georgia was cool because you got a lot of flat wooded lots, and the subdivisions were nice. So a lot of properties were on the road; they weren't all landlocked, and we didn't have the land portal feature where you can just exclude landlocked. Then, so that was a big factor when sending it out because 40% of your mail in Alabama, 30% is going to go to landlocked properties, right?
Yeah,
and we didn't have that, so that was a big. Like Georgia, and then you have the north of Georgia with the Blue Ridge Mountain Range, where it's really desirable for campers and cabins and things like that. So you have the mountains in the north, it's flat in the center, flat in the south. It gets a little sandy down in the south, southeast, Augusta, all that, because you're getting close to Florida and then the coast also in Savannah, Georgia. But in general, I thought it was there was a really good mix in Georgia. Now it's a little bit hotter in terms of land investors where they're located and sending mailers and targeting. Georgia's definitely top of the list, I'd say. But there's pros and cons in every state. Like Alabama, you do a lot of deals in Alabama.
Yeah, very a lot are landlocked. I wish the land portal was out a few years ago when I first started, because like you said, like anywhere from like 40 to 50% of your mailers could be going to landlocked properties unless you have a VA scrub that out on the front end. But operationally, that's just can get messy quite quickly. A little bit outdated county records, but if you select the right areas, do some due diligence on the front end, there's plenty of good deals in those areas.
Yeah, I agree. And the reason why I'm talking about Georgia and Alabama is because I want you guys to understand you're not going to find the perfect state or area. They're all going to have pros and cons. Like Alabama, half of them, you're not going to find be able to find the deed or send someone there. Like it just gets hard to county records, things like that. And then you go to Kentucky and the county provided data is god awful in Kentucky, and they're going to say, the county's going to say, that's why we have the AI scrubbing tool at the land portal for states like that. 30% of those are going to have houses on it where you're sending mail to, and now you can get it down to less than 1% with that little button. But Kentucky has horrible data. So every area does have pros and cons, but I think once you pick your area, look at the terrain, then dive in, say, okay, I like this area, I like the terrain and the diversity here. This looks good to me. Now let's dive into county selection, and then it'll go from there.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just do not overthink it. Narrow it down, then keep narrowing your scope from there, and then just try to be as quick and as efficient as possible, because it's so easy to overthink it.
100%. Well, I think from here, just go find us a deal in Illinois, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota. Find us a deal. Let us know in the comments what you guys think of those states. We'd love to be a part of those and keep filling in the pins, because those were, we had 8 states that were not filled in, that we haven't done deals in, and I'm going to find out why and if there is any reason to that.
Yeah, we should have a goal by like the end of the year. We need to do a deal in every state.
Yeah. What would be your most concerning state, you think, to get one? Idaho?
You know what? Idaho, because of the price point.
That'd be tough.
I would say that because of the price point.
All the Californians just jacking it up from Silicon Valley.
I can't blame them, man. I can't blame people even.
Awesome. Well, good stuff, guys. As always, please like and subscribe our YouTube channel. It really helps drive our mission forward. Thank you for joining.
Yep. Take care, everyone.
As always, thank you for joining. Please do us a huge favor and like and subscribe our YouTube channel and share this with a friend. It really means the world to Ron and I, but more importantly, it could help change the life of someone else. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next episode.